Okay. I'm just going on the live transcript because it's sometimes easier for me to use the transcript with which to put words in. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for coming on today. And I'm so looking forward today. So let's start. I'll just start by just introducing myself. And I'm Shellie Lovegrove, an evolutionary midwife and mental fitness coach. And I help women who are stressed, overwhelmed, at the brink in their relationships, business, or at home, develop the mental fitness and strength to walk a new path of power, purpose, and grace. So let's get to the topic. I am so excited today because today was really inspired by Shellie Schoppe. And Shellie Schoppe has been coaching with me, and I've really treasured being part of this process and helping be of service. But what I really want to add here is that we are never in this for ourselves. So even if I go into a situation where I'm coaching someone, I am always learning, because actually I'm always in a process of evolution, as in the same as anyone that comes to see me. So I really, today it is all about really exploring some of the discussion that Shellie and I have had, and particularly of what's going on with result of the kind of the vehicle that allows me to kind of become more and expand myself more, and hopefully her too. So I want to say thank you. And just at the same time, just really, really honor that the teacher can be taught. And that's part of evolution. The student teaches us in the same way that the teacher is taught as the teacher teaches. So we're never, ever not going to evolve, because that is part of what our purpose is, our soul is. So as I said, the topic is how to reconnect with your higher essence and see yourself as part of the bigger whole. And really, this is absolutely essential to our part in our transcendent evolution. So I know before I've mentioned that the word evolve means work. You know, when we look at the word evolve, we realize that actually it means love in action. So what I'd really like you to kind of put in the chat is, how do you see evolve? What do you understand by evolve? So if you can do that, might be useful. Just kind of get a sense of what your definition of what evolve is. I know that for me, evolve is love in action. So, and I think that's the whole path of us as humans, our path towards love. That's it, pure and simple. We learn, and our job is to learn how to love. And within the word evolve, it gives us those clues, doesn't it? It gives us the clues. Shellie says love, she sends a heart. Lovely. So within that, we know that there's the word love. If we do an anagram, we would see that it's love, and there's a VE, which stands for energy. So the path, it's really the path of doing love, or loving in action in and of itself. So we also know that most of the teachers, most of the great teachers, have always talked about the path of love, peace, and compassion. And why is that? Why is love, peace, and compassion important? Yeah, put that in the chat. Why is love, peace, and compassion so important? And I wonder, what do we understand about that? What do we understand about that? So what we understand about the energetics of what happens when we're doing love. What's those energetics? What happens? Maybe think about just for a moment when you truly, truly love. So maybe sometimes the easiest is sometimes to think about an animal or a child. Sometimes those are the easiest ones to kind of really just get this feeling of love, and just let yourself feel it and just notice where you feel it. Just kind of be really aware of where you feel the love. And what is the quality of that love? What happens to you when you feel that love? What happens in an essence as an energy? What happens to you? And maybe you can put that in the chat too. I'd love to know. I'd love to know what happens, because it'd be interesting. I may feel something completely different, but I think there are some universal things. And one of those universal things is we expand and we grow. And part of evolve and part of love is telling us what it is. It's about expansion. It's about growth. So from a neuroscientific and perspective, when we're in that higher order thinking, and that, so what Shellie said, gentle acceptance of what we cannot control. Yes, wow, that's amazing. And I was going to come to that, so you've already preempted me. But that is great. That is great. So from the neuroscience perspective, when we're in a higher order thinking, what happens is that everything moves to the forefront of our brain. We connect almost like what we call in the Kabbalah, the highest states of being. So we have the first emanation of light, the first emanation of consciousness. And there's this light that comes out and it receives, and that's wisdom, that's knowledge. Yeah, that's knowledge. And the next thing that comes out as we kind of see and reflect of itself, and that becomes understanding, right? Knowledge and understanding. And one is more masculine. So knowledge is the gathering of information, it's the getting and the knowing. And the understanding is the feeling stuff. And when we move into our transcendent space, we're actually bringing these two higher energies, which really are kind of could be in our brain sort of thing. Those transcendent energies are moving forward. So all the nervous activations that are moving in our brain are moving forward to this point. And it makes absolute perfect sense that when we think about God or when we look at God, we kind of are always looking up, because we're moving into that transcendent place. So in this space, when we have that activation, we are in that transcendent self, and we become the creator in action. Okay, this means one thing, that we are able to see wholeness in everything. We know we are not everything, and yet we feel as though we're everything. So we still have the knowing of who and what we are, but in this case, we feel we are part of the whole. All right, we feel and we see ourselves and others as us. Okay. And so when we move into that really high order love state, we are creating this blending, and it opens now the heart. It opens the heart to allow us to resonate as we begin to connect to those deeper and ever deeper levels. Yeah. And this is the space where we go beyond things. This is the space where we literally go into the quantum field. And it's the space where we no longer doubt ourselves. It's the space where we are not ruled by our saboteurs. We are not ruled by fear or bigotry or anger or any of those kind of things. Instead, we get a really big, clear think. Yeah, we get to see things and at the totality of what it really is. Yeah, we get to be able to be in that space where we can do love, which means we can definitely see the big picture. We can be kindness itself. We can experience joyous love. And this is the key evolution. This is the key to evolution. But humans are notoriously good at misconstructing what love is all about, right? We grew up in a hostile world and we developed certain kinds of energy frequencies. And, you know, what happened was little things like mothers take on traditional roles of endlessly thinking that they don't deserve, constantly believing they have to give. Daughters are taught this right from the very beginning in order for them to be good caretakers. And culture runs that pattern. Most of the caretaking is given to women, right? It's become the expectation that culture puts on women. And even worse is we judge a mother that perhaps abuses her child more cruelly than we would a man. In fact, if you look at the sentences, women are absolutely given higher sentences because of this judgment that sits there that a mother must care. Now, of course, she must. But the thing is, there's an imbalance in the level at which there is absolute judgments against women with regards to caring. So yeah, that's really interesting. So yeah, there's this double standard that we need to watch out for, and which can limit us, but we have to also be aware that as women, we do it ourselves, right? We do it ourselves to other women, and we are not exempt of persecuting ourselves, right? So we not only persecute others, but we persecute ourselves. So you get the picture. So how do we change that? How do we do love? How do we evolve? How do we become ourselves? Well, I've been asking this in question because something that really came up for me was this question of why imposter syndrome. Does everybody have imposter syndrome? And I'm going to say yes. I think that imposter syndrome is, where are you on the imposter syndrome spectrum, right? Where are you on that spectrum? And we can talk endlessly about, yeah, what happened to us, yada, 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 the attachment disorders, whether you had a secure one or not, and why things don't shift unless we start to embrace the fact. But we are energetic beings. And maybe we can look at it from an energetic perspective, and we can look at how we can express our emotions differently. But how can we kind of know we're in this energetic imbalance? So the two things that came up for me this week, and very gladly, I bought the book that Shellie suggested, which was a reading book about grief and Grieving by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and Ed Kessler, and also exploring the assemblage point, an energetic area in our body. So most of us have experienced or heard about the stages of grieving. Many of us kind of experienced the 5 stages of grieving, but many of us don't know that there's actually 7. And part of it is that they probably are more minutiae within them. And these are particular stages of grieving that allow us a process, right? They allow us a process in order for us to be able to heal. But what really came up for me was this idea that there's part of me that's still in state of grieving. Because while I'm reading this book, the tears are running down my, I was crying buckets and buckets and buckets. So I kind of really realized there was a lot of grieving still about the grieving of my life and my mother, right? Grieving for the dreams that I didn't have, but wished for. And one of those was, obviously, the career, and the other was children. Yeah. So there were a few serious bits of grieving that I was kind of recognizing that I hadn't given myself space for in order to grieve. So I realized that for many years I was grieving, and maybe that low grade depression that I was experiencing was really grief about a lot of the things that I had regretted. Yeah. Most of the time I had been taught, because I needed to be the strong one, I was taught, you're the strong girl, right? So I had to be strong, capable, efficient, clever, never ask for help, learned that I didn't get it anyway, and did everything alone, no matter how hard. And that meant I was constantly in a state of shutdown. And although I could do a lot of good helping a lot of people, there were still parts of me that was closed. And actually, it hurt me really a lot when I remember trying to get pregnant and a person said to me, you have to open your heart. And I said to her, but my heart is open. And she said, no, your heart isn't. And I couldn't believe she said that to me. And the thing is, when I look at it now, I know what she said was true, but I didn't understand it then. How do you open a heart when you don't know how to open it? Yeah. When you don't even know why it's closed in the first place. Yeah. And that's what part of imposter syndrome is about. Part of imposter syndrome, we all have on that spectrum because about our assemblage point, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I was in that space, and even I couldn't evolve. I couldn't go beyond the next level because my heart was closed. And there have been bits of my heart that are opening and opening and opening. And it's really interesting to notice what bits were closed and what were not. So why the assemblage points? So why the assemblage points? I mentioned it a moment ago, but what really connected for me today was really understanding this idea about the assemblage point. So when we think of evolution, we're thinking about the journey to love. So what does love mean? What does love mean? Love means I don't see me as separate from you, right? That's what love means. I am you and you are me. I treat you like I treat me. So of course, if we're damaged, we're going to treat other people as we would treat them. Yeah, with the damage that we will do, because when we're damaged, we're not the best people, even with the highest intention, we're not. So our evolution is that journey of love, or into love, let's say. So Dr. Amit Goswami, a really, really intelligent man that I spoke to and had a whole 2, 3 or 4 days, I think, if I remember, a little while ago, but sort of 10 years ago. He's part of Quantum University. And he always talked about the assemblage point, but he always talked about it slightly different. He talked about it as the sense of the part of our heart that says me, not me. All right. And if we think anatomically, where is the immune part of our heart? We know the immune system, our thymus, when we're born, is just behind our heart, right? And in babies, it's huge. And over the years, our own immune system comes into play and this shrivels up. So we have this thymus heart that tells us there's you and what's not me, right? We're separated. But if we think about the assemblage point, when you say to someone, hey, who, me? Where do you put your hand? Just say, oh, who, me? And put your hand where you would say, oh, who's me? And most of us will put it slap bang on the assemblage point. Slap bang on the assemblage point, right? The assemblage point is the point of who is me. Who is me? So the interesting thing is when we're in the uterus, we don't need an immune system, really, because our immune system is pretty contained, right? We don't need to find out what bugs are coming in and out. because the whole of the 9 months it's stable. So what we have is this thymus gland to help us when we move out so that we can learn. But, you know, if you look at children, when you look at children, is most children that are, when they're tiny and they want to give, they just want to give, they just are, right? They don't have an assemblage point. The reason is their whole body is an assemblage point, right? Their whole body is just merging with the whole of the world because they have been the whole of their time in 9 months merged with the Godhead, right? They've been in the theta state. They've been with the Godhead all the time. So they have no idea about separation. They only know that they are, right? They don't have a sense of discernment. In fact, if you look at children, they don't see color, right? They see other children and they'll play with anyone, right? They'll play with anyone because all they see is another little people, right? And what they don't see is a separation. They don't know about color. So they start their journey with this no assemblage point. They are just in the state of being and they move and they just go through the waves, and that's how they are, right? There's nothing there. But the moment they start to differentiate, so when you get to kids sort of about 3, they say, me, I'm that big, me, right? What happens is they're starting to see separation. They're starting to see separation. And what's happening now is that they are now becoming more thinking. They're moving more into the left side of their brain, and they're actually not using their right brain as much. The right brain, which is all about connectedness, all about coming together. It's all about wholeness, right? So this is what happens. They become from right-brained, beautiful creatures predominantly into left brain. And so what happens is they start to become very aware of me. And so the assemblage point now starts to contract from all of everything and it comes here because it's actually a point of consciousness. Although it seems a bit odd, but it is a point of consciousness. And in Quantum University, everything is in consciousness. And it only becomes actualized the moment the wave collapses into a particle. So when we start to say me, yeah, we're bringing consciousness to this point, and that's where the assemblage point is. But think of it this way, with the separation, when we kind of go, oh, that's me, we're now got separation from you, right? And what happens is this causes conflict because, you know, what happens is that at that moment in time, we start to, we kind of realize that we are no longer just having everything. Now we've now been told we can't have it. So our needs and our wants don't match what is. And that takes us into huge conflict. And that means that we then come up, because now we've got our lovely left brain that's making meaning of everything. And that little left brain is now coming up with all these alter egos, right? It comes up with beliefs, it comes up with a new identity, it comes up with behaviors, and it causes us to be unhappy, right? And it's this taking on of these new identities that make us feel an imposter because they are not us. They are not us. And because they're not us, we can't accept them. And so we judge them. But we feel it in our body. We feel it in our body. So we judge them from the mind, but we feel it here. And this is where the damage is. This is where the damage is. And so when we experience that, what happens is we move off kilter. Our assemblage point gets moved. And if we've had terrible traumas, our assemblage point gets moved drastically, and we literally change personality from what we were meant to be. Now, of course, we were all meant to be beautiful, happy, lovey people, but we get shifted even more. We get displaced even more. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of the slides in a second, but what I want you to think about something which, of course, I'm always going to use my medical background, but we have a more tangible way to think about the assemblage point is thinking about the lungs, right? We have the lungs, and then the lungs kind of separate into, well, the bronchi, trachea, and then the bronchi. And so we have right sort of at this point of assemblage point, believe it or not, is where the bronchi split, right? The bronchi split, and that's where the assemblage point is. It's incredible how this is. And what happens is that when we have a collapsed lung, very often the lungs are surrounded by the pleural cavity, right? Just like the heart is surrounded by the pericardium, right? So we have the lungs surrounded by the pleural cavity, but when a lung is torn, or when we say there's a torn lung, there's a tear, what happens is that tear becomes a valve, a one-way valve. And what happens is as we breathe in, air is shooting into the pleural sac, right? And we breathe in and air creeps in, but when we breathe out, it closes. And so what happens? The air gets trapped in the pleural sac. There in the pleural sac, it's getting trapped, right? And then you breathe again, and it does that. It gets bigger. It gets bigger. And then what happens is so much air on the one side of that pleural sac that it starts to push the lungs and the mediastinum in another direction. And once we move this part where the heart sits and everything is, and all the big vessels, when that happens, we get incredibly distressed. In fact, it is a matter of life or death to get a drain in at that point, because the chances are you will die. So this is how, when we have the assemblage point that is off, the energetic point that is off, the more it deviates, the more it causes us to go into that distress and into death mode, right? And this is really concerning. It's really concerning. So we want to keep that assemblage point back where it needs to be, in the center, all right? So I'm going to quickly, let's do this. Let's do the share. I can get onto that very quickly. And I will share the screen. Let's find it. Right, let me open this. Maybe I should put my glasses on so that I can see exactly what I'm doing. All right. All right, here we are. Okay, so we can see the assemblage point is the center of the human electric field, which is a point or a vortex where the life force is able to enter the electromagnetic part of the body. And here's a nice image. So here, if we look at the heart, there's a toroidal field that moves around our body. We have that toroidal field, but we also have a toroidal field around our heart area over here. But if we have another picture here, this is what we actually can see, right? So we have this toroidal field, which is the other aspect of what we see, but this is how it looks when you really look at it. It's like the cosmos inside us. This is the cosmos inside us, yeah? It's the star that's inside us. So here we can look at it from the sense of a toroidal field or electromagnetic field. And through our heart, we have a field that goes down and around and up to our head and around and down and around. You can see this is much bigger than obviously our head because it doesn't go as far, right? And if we look over here, we see on the far right, you'll see that there's a toroidal field going around and around. And this is actually, when you look at it, why it's like this shape is because you have a lub-dub. You have two beats of the heart. And that's what happens. And then remember I said, if you move something apart, you will start to get certain kinds of sensations. So we already know that if you move the energetic curve more to the right, it actually activates. So remember, the right side of our body is very much ruled by our emotions. It's certainly the right part of our brain. If you had a stroke on the left-hand side, you would find that this would be more of what you would experience on this side, right? But if we move, if there's nothing wrong with your brain, if we move energetically this way, you'll see it has the excess of the physical. So everything that would be more positive, right? And if we move up slightly to the right, we become more manic, more panicky, more anxiety, more stress. Move it down becomes, well, anger is at least something where we express emotions, but then neurosis, depression, and fatigue, right? So as we go down, we get lower energy and lower physical, mental energy, excessive physical and mental energy when we go up, right? Now we're just becoming manic. On the right-hand side, we start creating hallucinations, delusions, fantasies, and apathy. And of course, low physical energy on the left, right? So we're moving it to the left means the heart is struggling even more, right? On the right, if it moves to the right, the heart has got more ability to beat, 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 beat because it's not being restricted. But if we move to the left, the heart is being restricted, right? So think of it from a sense of a purely physical, but it does have an effect. So down here is delirium, and here is dementia. So this is really key, right? So when it moves to this side, we get dementia. And we already know that dementia is very big in our world these days. So, right, we're back. We're back, and hopefully we will be back right now. Good, 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 good. Right, I can see it, we're back. So we've seen how the assemblage point is. Now I know that this is purely metaphysical, but we have shown actually it's kind of like we're a battery, right? And our heart is the universe for us. Our heart is the universe. And so our sole purpose in life is to go back to one thing, an awakened heart. You know, when we were born, I know a lot of people say children have wisdom, children have all of these things. And I'm going to say they don't. They have intuition. They have an ability to just love, but they haven't had to choose love, right? They haven't had to choose action. They haven't got a consciousness to be able to do that. So our sole purpose in life is to go back to our awakened heart, to our awakened heart. So, yes, and just going back, we didn't make choices as children, but as adults, when we make choices to clean up, when we make choices to cleave to love, to cleave and choose love, we start our awakened journey. So what we know of the awakened heart is we have to go back to center. We have to go back to the center where we are no longer attached and we are fully integrated back into the world. We are at the center of our universe, right? And we don't get rocked very easily. So we have to let go of those old resentments, the things we have or haven't done. And we have to forgive ourselves. We have to forgive ourselves. and make restitution and create peace. We have to want that. We have to want that. And this can be done in many ways. It can be done through doing an active grieving process, really looking, doing little things where you're actually looking at where am I on my stage of my grieving. So, hey, there was a dream that I never fulfilled, right? Let me sit with that dream and let me see what I've lost. What would life have been like? What would have been the dream that would have given me what I needed? And just sit with that. Look to see if you've got any resentments. Look to see if there's anything you're harboring. Look to see and then let it go. Then find a way to accept what is there, what is, and let go. So journaling helps us to clarify. Journaling helps us to move from our beta brain all the way into our alpha brain and then to our theta brain. And the moment we get to our theta brain, our theta state is our state of being in a state of conscious creator. Right? Our alpha brain, interestingly enough, we get hit up against limiting beliefs. And our beta brain is when we can often be active in our saboteurs. We're in our imposter. So we want to go down to that theta brain where we can actually change. And of course, energetic techniques help, right? Energetic techniques help. So massage, crystals, EFT, hypnosis, meditation, all of those things actively help. But one thing I really find can be very useful is if you just close your eyes and let yourself get a sense of yourself moving. So it's sometimes better when you're standing. And just kind of notice you may go forward, back, and think a thought. So think a thought about, okay, I haven't achieved this, right? And just notice, are you moving to the left, to the right? Does it feel that you're kind of swaying a little bit? Let yourself notice that and then look at that, that little bit of diagram that I gave you on the live. I'll put it into the chat too. Because what will be is that this will give you an idea where you are on the scale. And there you can journal. There you can find your place. There you can make that shift. So this is really what is really key. All right. So anything that brings you to your body so that you can notice if you're on kilter or out of kilter, you can deal with that. Because just by noticing allows you to connect back to that and bring it back into energy, bring it back into its source. So we must evolve. We must awaken our heart. And we must do that because that's the only way we can connect to our higher essence and our part of the bigger whole. So I hope that you have enjoyed this, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing how it all fits together in a kind of a map. And if you feel inspired to work with me, then please click on the link or comment in the comments and book yourself in for a call. And together we can see how I can help you have greater peace, love, and flow in your life. So thank you for being with me today, and put any comments in the chat. I'll be really grateful. And, just put replay, and I would love to hear your thoughts. And I know that Sheila was here. I'm going to say thank you, Sheila, for coming on. And I look forward to your comments in the replay. And Shellie, thank you very much for being here with me. Much love. Much love. Goodbye, everybody. Take care. And I'll put the link in the chat. Bye-bye.